All right, let's jump into another one, another niche book, but perhaps if there are any of you out there who are learning about psychodynamic psychotherapy, as I mentioned in the last review of a similar topic, I would be reading this book next. This book is Psychodynamic Psychotherapy, a Clinical Manual by Deborah Cabaniss. So this is a clinical manual that builds upon the foundation from the last book on this topic I read, which was Long-Term Psychodynamic Psychotherapy by Gabbard. So essentially it was recommended to me by my mentor to read the books in this order to make sure I had a solid foundation of the terms and the topics at play here with this book, and then to move forward and build upon that with the clinical manual by Cabaniss. So I think that this is a common approach in different training programs because for one, it works. It's been working for me. I've learned a lot. And two, this is a book that was written for specifically for those in training, and it was written in collaboration with psychiatry residents, I believe. So there was a lot of discussion about what was working for them in terms of their supervision and what they were learning and where their deficits were, and they put all that together and were cognizant of those things when they made this book. So now that I've finished working my way through the manual and discussing it with one of my mentors, I have some thoughts on it. The book opens up and it starts at the very beginning with just a general overview and definition of psychodynamic psychotherapy. So just of an interesting point, you kind of break it down to its Latin components. You have the mind in motion, psychodynamics, and essentially all of our minds are in motion and evolving all the time. So that makes sense. And this is a therapeutic modality that approaches the mind with that in mind, so to speak. So the book goes from there and it talks about an assessment, how to do a proper assessment, what you're looking for in a patient when you're assessing whether or not they would benefit from this modality of therapy. And then it works its way into the beginnings of treatment. How are you going to set up the frame for your treatment? What are you looking to accomplish? What boundaries need to be set? What the patient needs to understand from the beginning. Then it works its way into some of the core tenets of psychodynamic psychotherapy. Talks about listening, different ways of listening, making sure that you're looking for the meaning in everything. The book does a nice job of explaining that essentially everything in therapy has latent meaning, and so you're looking to uncover that and understand it for yourself, and that meaning's going to be different across different patients, of course. Developing that therapeutic alliance, which is key. One of the things that is essentially constant across all therapeutic modalities is that the therapeutic alliance itself seems to be an outlying factor that can be a proxy for the success of the therapy. So the book gets into some more specific things, talking about what you may expect. Affect, free association, resistance, transference, countertransference, unconscious conflicts, fantasies and defenses, and dreams. Of course, being someone who enjoys Carl Jung, I enjoyed the chapter on dreams. It was a good chapter. And the book talks about how we have particular goals that we're looking to achieve in the therapy with patients, improving their self-perceptions, their self-esteem, their relationships with others, their ability to regulate their emotions, their ability to adapt to stress, and their cognitive function. The book talks about how at all times you're going to be assessing whether you should be using an uncovering strategy or simply a supportive strategy, what that means, what the difference is, and why you need to apply those strategies appropriately. And with essentially all patients, you're going to be applying them simultaneously throughout the treatment at different times and in different degrees. So these are all things you would be learning throughout this book. The book finally gets into the idea of working through this middle part of therapy that takes up the bulk of the time in treatment, and then finally ending, the ending phase or the termination phase. How would you assess that a patient is approaching readiness for that? What might the patient typically be feeling as you approach that end, that part of treatment, and what might you be feeling so that you can be confident that it's the right time, and then how to actually change your approach to the therapy to be more in accordance with a typical termination phase and how to go about that successfully. So the book really covers all the bases, as you can tell. A few critiques I have of the book: I felt that it was a bit longer than it needed to be in terms of, there's obviously a lot of information covered here, but I do think the book could still be about 20 to 30% shorter if it were all refined a bit. The book gives examples for essentially everything, and I understand that with it being a manual, what their goal is to make sure that any reader has an example for every topic, but I felt that I didn't need that many examples. Oftentimes I felt like I get it, I don't need to read another example, I understand it from the first definition given, or the first explanation. But with that said, you can't know ahead of time which readers are going to need examples for which topics. So of course they covered them all, and I still think it's worth going through the book in its entirety, making sure that you have an understanding of all the different aspects at play here. Another thing that I thought was just, it's really inconsequential, but just kind of interesting. This book had more typos than a typical book. Not a lot, but you may notice one to a few in an average book. This had more than that. And I just was thinking as an interesting point that those days may be behind us now with AI. You could have an AI spell check your work in its entirety, and AI will understand context, so it will pick up on all those typos, or it should, at least in theory. So the times of there being typos at all in books may be officially behind us now, which is an interesting thing to think about. So overall, I would recommend, if you are interested in psychodynamic psychotherapy and getting started in that you start with this book. Again, Long-Term Psychodynamic Psychotherapy does a great job of introducing you to all the terms and laying a foundation for you to build on. And then moving forward with Psychodynamic Psychotherapy, a clinical manual by Cabaniss. This is the second edition. And I feel that after going through these two books, I have a much more solid understanding of how to actually approach this modality of therapy with patients. I'm eager to get started in my practice with that. And whereas before I had a general idea of what it might look like, it still seemed quite amorphous to me how exactly it would unfold and what approaches I should take throughout the actual work of the therapy. But now with this understanding that I've gained from this reading, I feel like I am prepared to approach that. So if you've read this book, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And if you have any other questions about anything specific that you want me to relate back to you in regards to these books or my ideas on them, then please let me know. I'd be happy to share that with you. And otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.